Welcome to Japan Seikatsu. I'm Ian. Today let's discuss the question of, do you really need Japanese to work in Japan? Before we get started though, please be sure to click like and subscribe to join our growing community. Let's get started. Well, do you need Japanese to work in Japan? And the answer is not always. There are some jobs where Japanese isn't required. English teaching is probably the most common one, but there are some jobs in the IT industry where Japanese isn't required, and there are some high-level, very specialized executive roles in the larger cities in Japan where Japanese is not required. However, if you want to open yourself up to the other 99% of job opportunities in Japan, then having Japanese will be a huge asset to you. Let's discuss some of the benefits. Well, first, you'll get much more out of your Japan experience. For example, location. If you don't speak Japanese, the opportunities will probably be in the larger cities. You know, you're probably looking at Tokyo, you're probably looking at Osaka, maybe Nagoya. But if you have a grasp of the Japanese language, then you really open yourself up to anywhere in Japan. Not only location, but also jobs as well. As I mentioned earlier, when you speak Japanese, there is a huge array of job opportunities that exist that simply do not exist if you don't speak Japanese. So your professional career will be much deeper, much richer in terms of opportunities. Finally, your private life, your family, your friends, that network can be so much deeper if you speak Japanese. There's just, let's say 1% of the Japanese population is fluent in English. How are you going to connect with the other 99% of people? I think in my own case, my in-laws are Japanese. Not all of them are English speakers, and so the fact that I can speak Japanese means that I'm able to communicate with them, which is such a wonderful thing to be able to do, where I wouldn't be able to do that if I didn't speak Japanese. But also in terms of friends, think of all of the people in Japan that don't speak English that you won't be able to connect with unless you bridge to them by learning Japanese. So you will get so much more out of your Japan experience, both in terms of your private life and in terms of your professional life, by speaking Japanese. Number two is so important in general, but by learning Japanese, you're going to put yourself into a pond with fewer fish, meaning you have less competition. So for myself, as an example, I work for a Japanese company in the finance industry, and I originally I graduated my undergraduate program in the United States. To get into finance, when I was graduating, it was just so competitive in the United States. It wasn't possible for me to enter the industry. Now, coming out of an MBA program, which I did in Tokyo, I was able to get into the finance industry, and I think the reason was that Japanese language skill set that I had picked up in the interim, and I was entering the industry in Tokyo as a English speaker, as a Japanese speaker, and there was just a smaller pool of people with those skill sets. So you will put yourself in a less competitive environment, which is a huge tailwind for your career. Another example is some of the tech companies. So if you try to work, for example, in California for an Amazon or a Google or an Apple or a Facebook, it's going to be incredibly competitive and difficult to do. It's very difficult to differentiate yourself. Now, if you're in Tokyo and you're going for some of the tech companies through the Tokyo door, and you speak Japanese, and you have some of the IT skills that they're looking for, I think you'll find that it's a much easier entrance just because there's less competition. So from a professional perspective, learning Japanese means you've got less competition. Thirdly, life, your daily life. You know, you will be surrounded in Japanese when you go to the restaurant, when you go to the train station, when you go to the office. So, just to be able to get around speaking Japanese is going to make all of that easier. You want to mail something at the post office? Well, Japanese helps. You want to order something? Japanese helps. So, you can get away with just English in a lot of the larger cities, and you could find English speaking doctor, and you could find your group of friends that speaks English and try to construct a bubble of English. But then why are you in Japan, right? I mean, you're missing out on a lot of the richness and opportunity that is there if you're living in that bubble. But also, bubbles they're bubbles, they can burst. If you had a health emergency, and you needed quickly to discuss with a doctor or a paramedic what was happening, and you didn't speak any Japanese, there's nothing you can do. So it will make your daily life easier. Well, I hope I made the case that while it's not always required to speak Japanese to work in Japan, that it is to your benefit to learn Japanese. And remember, this is a journey, so you can get started today, and you don't need to wait until you have JLPT 1 or JLPT 2 before you start trying to get on this journey. When I came to Japan on the JET program, I was nowhere near fluent in Japanese. I had very basic beginner Japanese, and I started my journey, and I continue my journey to this day. So, well, I hope this was helpful. Be sure to click like and subscribe, and thank you.